You got your offer accepted, congratulations, and now you're maybe thinking to yourself, what in the world actually happens next? Well, in this video, I'm gonna break down everything you're gonna wanna know in the escrow process. Now, if you're wondering, what is escrow? A lot of that's gonna be covered in this video. This is the part 4 of our home buying mini-series. So if you're watching this video first, highly recommend going back and watching the other videos because this one is going to pull a lot of the information from what we've already talked about. But let's go ahead and dive right in. I've got my screen share here and let's get into it. By the way, if you don't know who I am, Christian Stubbs, team leader and owner of Onyx Homes, where we help people buy, sell, and invest all over Southern California. And we've helped over 600 and some odd people just since the year 2020. And we have over 400 5-star reviews. So we definitely know what we're talking about. And I want to make this as simple as possible so you can understand better the home buying experience. So this is me going through our 7 saving strategies. This is what we do with all of our clients. And this leads to how we save our clients thousands of dollars while also keeping them protected. And this is, like I said, the mini series. So far in this series, if you're following along, we have covered the research phase, how to correctly research for property, meaning you get your kind of narrowing down your search. We talked about getting prepared. In the last video, we talked about what is actually included or how do you write offers. Now, this is the big one. We're going to be checking off what actually happens after you get your offer accepted. Now, finding the right house is a whole nother story, which is why we had 3 entire episodes over finding. And now we're going to be talking about closing in this video. Now, at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about our buyer strategy session. And if at any point you want to book a call to talk with our team, you can go to allaboutoc.com and you can book a call right there and you get the free resources as well as getting the entire, I think this is a 126 page doc where you get the entire thing as well too. But we'll talk about that at the end. All right, so let's talk about what is escrow. The first thing I want to say, escrow is 2 different things. Number 1, escrow is a company. So I'm going to say number 1, escrow is a company. And number 2, escrow is a timeline. That is a really ugly T. Timeline. All right, now if that sounds a little bit confusing to start, it is, but let me break this down. So escrow is the company that is in the middle of the transaction. So you can see here, escrow is in between the buy side over here and the sell side over here. Now, they hold all of the money and they hold all of the paperwork. That's what the escrow company actually does. They are a neutral third party that's in the middle of the transaction. So the sell side, this obviously has, I'm going to do this in red over here. You're going to have the seller's agent or the listing, same thing, agent. And then you have the seller, or if there's multiple of them. All right, so the seller and the seller agent. Let's just leave it at that. And then on the buy side, you have the buyer, and you have the buyer's agent. Pretty straightforward. So there's 2 different mechanisms here, but the buyer side talks to escrow and the seller side talks to escrow. So the buyer and seller never talk to each other, at least they really shouldn't. And the agents do talk to each other. So I probably should have wrote this a little bit better, but the buyer's agent and the seller's agent talk together, who also then talk to and communicate with escrow back and forth. Right, so escrow is this company in the middle of the transaction. They handle all the money, they handle all the paperwork, and basically they don't close the deal unless everybody agrees in writing to the deal. Okay, so that's number 1, which is what is escrow, the company. Number 2 is the timeline. So escrow is also a timeline. Now, normally speaking, a traditional escrow timeline is going to be 30 days. So the way that I explain it is short is 10 to 15 days. Let's say normal is 30. And then let's do blue for long is, let's just say 45 plus. Like 60 days would be outrageous. 45 is a long escrow, 30 is normal, 10 to 15 is very fast and aggressive. So that's kind of your timeline. And then as far as what happens in escrow, we'll build out this timeline together. So that's what your escrow actually is. So if you were to write an offer today and get it accepted tomorrow, you could pretty much expect that generally speaking, within the next 30 days, you could be moving into your new home. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now I got my pages. Oh, I missed a page here. So the next thing that I want to talk about is, let me add a page here. The next thing I want to talk about is your contingencies. So this is how not to lose money. That's an M. Okay, how not to lose your money. This is one of the #1 questions that we get from home buyers before they get into the escrow process, is they want to understand to make sure that they do not lose their money. So this is done through what is called contingencies. Now, one thing I share with all of our clients is that you are not buying the home when you write the offer. Now, as scary as that might be, and don't take this to be, oh, Christian's just being a salesman. No, that's not true at all. You're really not buying the house when you write the offer. You are buying the house when you remove your contingencies. Specifically, this first one we're going to talk about here, which is your homework phase. Now, this is not a technical term. This is what I call your due diligence process, okay? I like to make everything easy for us to understand, so I call this homework, due diligence. I hope I spelled that right. Appraisal, I'm sure somebody in the comment section will let me know if I didn't. I went to college, I swear. And then you have a loan. So these are the main 3 contingencies that you're going to have in every single transaction. Is a homework phase, which is you doing your due diligence to find out if are you comfortable buying this home or not. The second is the appraisal, and the third is the loan. So 2 and 3 are going to be completely dependent upon your lender. But #1 is all up to you. So let's go ahead and talk about the homework phase first. Let me go ahead and add a page here. All right, so let's talk about your homework. So there's really several major things that are going to happen inside of your homework phase. You're going to do inspections. You're going to read disclosures. And let's sum it up to just those 2 things. So with your inspections, what you're really doing is you're making sure that you're not buying a bad house. Right? So I'm going to write, don't buy a bad home. So what you're going to do here, there's 4 inspections that we pretty much require our clients actually do. So #1 is a general. And this is where you're going to have somebody go through the entire home, look at it on a surface level, and figure out everything they see wrong with the home. Now, they're not an expert in really anything, and they might be, but this isn't the point of it, is they're going to go through the house and look at the plumbing, they're going to look at the roofing, they're going to look at the structure, they're going to look at the, the windows, the electrical, everything, the HVAC system, and they're going to say, hey, everything looks pretty good overall, except for these areas, you have some red flags here, right? Maybe one of the most common things we get in Southern California is the HVAC system works. It might be 30 years old. It's way past its life expectancy. However, it still works, but it could blow up at any minute. You might want to have an expert come in and look at the HVAC system. HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, air conditioning. So that might be an example. I will use that in a moment here. So they will give you an overall general idea, hence the name general property inspection, of what you're getting yourself into with the house. Now, the second thing you're going to do is you're going to do a roof inspection. Now, yes, this might be the same person. It might be, it might not. Totally depends on the vendor. The third thing you're going to do is a termite. Now, every single property in Southern California has termites. It really just depends how much money is it going to cost to fix the problem, right? It's not really a big deal at all. It's just something to be aware of. And #4 is your sewer. More specifically, a sewer lateral. This is something we've added more recently, and the longer time goes on, the more reports we do, we really highly emphasize that our clients do this because we've just had way too many clients save $20,000 to $30,000 by paying a little bit extra to have a sewer inspection done. Basically what this is from the house to the public sewer, is there a problem with sewer going this way? If there is, it's really expensive. It's very uncommon there actually is a problem. So it's not something crazy, but when it is, it's really expensive, right? That's a lot of money signs. Okay, so those are your 4 general property inspections. Now, what you're gonna do is you are trying to figure out, do you feel comfortable buying this home? So you're gonna do these 4 inspections, and then you're gonna ask, are you okay with the home? And you might be, and you're ready to move forward, or you might not be, and you might have some questions. But regardless, you're going to feel one of likely 3 different ways. So I could pretty much guarantee you're going to feel one of 3 ways. You're somewhere in the middle here. You're going to feel sad about what you found. You're going to have additional questions, or you're going to be really happy and you want to buy the home. So if you feel really sad, let's talk about this first. So if you have a ton of problems with the property and you just don't feel comfortable anymore, you can cancel and you get your entire earnest money deposit back. So let's kind of build the timeline here. What is your earnest money deposit? This is the first thing that happens on, say, day 1 is your, I'm going to put EMD. So what is your earnest money deposit and how do we not lose money? I probably should have said this first. So if we wrote an offer today and it got accepted tomorrow, the very first thing you would do is your EMD, or this is your initial deposit. This goes into escrow, right? So you send your money goes to escrow, not to the seller, not to the agent, right? I don't touch money at all as a real estate agent. That money goes into escrow. So this is usually just so you can start to build things up. If you want to write a good offer, it's going to be 3% of the purchase price. Now, the reason it's 3% of the purchase price is even if you gave a $1 deposit, and you were to back out, let's say at the last minute, the seller would be able to go after you for what is called liquidated damages. And liquidated damages stipulate that the seller can't go after the buyer for more than 3%. So this is no extra fee. This is not a cost. This is good faith deposit. It just shows, frankly, that you're serious. That's really what this does. It shows you're willing to put money on the table right at the beginning of escrow, right? So that would be the first thing that would happen. Now, we're talking about the homework phase. So let's say, well, hold on a second. Let me go back down here. So right now we're talking about the homework phase. So we're doing inspections and we are doing all of our general property inspections, and then we're going to feel happy. We're going to have questions where maybe we need to do more inspections with the property, which is totally fine. So let me share the example is you do a general property inspection and you send the inspector out there and he says, yeah, the house is actually in really good condition, but the HVAC system's 30 years old and it could blow up at any minute. I use this example all the time because it's really common. And when I bought my home, this was the case. And it happens like literally on at least half of all the deals we do. Anyway, so you could then say, okay, we want to have a HVAC company come out and do give us a quote to fix or replace the system. So what this is going to lead to is it's going to lead to a request. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? This is going to lead to a request. I can't even type. For repairs. Now, this isn't necessarily only after your homework inspection, so I'm going to go back to this. But basically what happens is if you need the HVAC company to come out there, or if there's more problems with the roof, or if you find there's other stuff, you can then go do more inspections. These are just the 4 general that we talk about. To not make this video 5 hours long, I'm going to explain it from there. Right? So the second thing that happens, I'm just going to write on this page, are disclosures. So this is where the seller is going to tell you everything they know about the property, and you're going to find out a ton of the public record stuff, and you're just going to read tons of disclosures. So this is lots of reading, And one thing I always say here for all of our clients, this sounds silly writing it, but we don't read everything. I always make this very clear, and there's one major reason. Number one is if we read every word of everything, we would never get anything done. That's the honest truth. The second thing is, if we read something and we didn't think it was concerning, but you read it and you thought it was concerning, just because we don't think it's concerning doesn't mean that you don't. And everybody has a different gauge for what's concerning or not, or what's a red flag versus a yellow flag. So this is where we're very transparent, is we do not read every word of everything, nor do we even receive every word of everything that you get. So this is your job to come in here and let us know, hey, I read everything, everything's all good. Or you're going to say, hey, I've got questions. And then we jump in and we answer all your questions. We make sure we get all the information so that you can then feel one of these three ways, right? You're either going to feel happy, you're going to have questions, and we need to keep figuring that out, or you're going to feel sad and we need to cancel and get your earnest money deposit back. Now, transparently, if you were to cancel escrow, you would lose whatever you've spent so far. So you're going to be spending money for your inspections are going to cost money. Probably, if you did all 4 of these, probably somewhere in the ballpark of $2,000. You could definitely do cheaper. You could certainly spend more. And you probably have already ordered the appraisal contingencies or the appraisal as well too, which that will cost $500 to $1,200 depending on your lender and terms there. And we have lenders that do free appraisals for our customers. It's a whole nother story. Okay, so far, this is what we're getting at. Is in your homework phase, we're trying to figure out, do you feel happy, question mark, or sad? Now, the other aspect of this is the timeline. So I'm going to talk about this here. Let me get rid of the read part. Let's get rid of this box. Okay, so the other thing here is your timeline. So standard, let's write this in orange. So standard is 17 days for all contingencies to be removed, meaning that it's going to take you 2.5 weeks to decide if you feel comfortable buying the home or not. I can tell you with hundreds of deals of experience that it does not take 17 days to do this. We do this with all of our clients. We suggest 7 is normal, 10 is long, and 5 is very short. This is where it's like, okay, this is getting a little too quick. But this is how we structure not all of our offers. Obviously, it's totally up to our clients to choose what they want to do. But this is how we structure our offers. To where if we're doing normal here, right, this is most common, most popular, versus the standard is 2.5 weeks before somebody even feels comfortable finding out if they're going to buy the home or not. So this is what makes your offer better without just paying the most money. This will save you money, right? Is because we jump in, we do all of this right away. Okay, now in timelines, let's go back up to this top guy up here. So if we're running the same track, we're like, let's say 7 days in is right here. Now we're doing our homework. Oops. In the first 7 days, right? So this is all happening at the same time. Now, we've got that. So we've got our due diligence done. I'm sorry, our due diligence isn't quite done, but we did all of our inspections and we've read everything. And we either feel happy, we have questions, and we get those answered. But you either, at the end of the day, once you've done your due diligence, you're either going to feel happy or sad about it. I know this is a little bit third grader, but if you're super happy with it, there's nothing wrong with the house and you want to move forward, you just would skip the request for repairs. Most of the time, there's going to be something that you want to request. Most of the time. And if there is, this is where you are going to make, it's just that. It is a request for repairs. Now, there's a few different ways to do this, but basically what you're saying is Mr. and Mrs. Seller or whoever is we want to buy the home. However, there's this or these problems that we want resolved before we agree to buying the home. So basically, let's use the same example of the HVAC, right? Let's say we did all of our homework and we found the HVAC needs, I don't know, $5,000 in work. And we got a quote because we did a good job. This is what we do for all of our clients. When we find a problem that the buyer is a little uncertain with, we will then go get a quote from a reputable company to, let's say, fix or replace whatever it is. And then in our request, we can say, okay, we are willing to move forward if you guys fix AC. And the reality is the seller can respond. So the seller, they can say yes, they can say no, or they can counter. Right? Obviously, if they could not respond, which would obviously be a no. But if they say yes, if the seller says yes to your request, we will fix the AC, that means you are moving forward. This is where it's important. This is the point where you're buying the home. Is if you say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, whoever, we are willing to buy your home, but we want to make sure the AC is fixed. Now, this is when you're buying the home, is if they agree to it, you are removing that contingency. That's when you're really buying it. Right? So you're saying if they do what you ask them. So now let's talk about this, because there's a few different options here. I'm going to talk about pros and cons of asking for. So how to ask. The number one thing I would say with asking for a request for repairs is silly requests get silly responses. So for example, if it's let's say we got a quote for $5,000 to fix the AC and you wanted to get a good deal, so you asked for $50,000. Well, I would say from a lot of experience that there's a really, really high likelihood that you get zero, because you would have probably pissed off the seller at that point. And a lot of buyers do this and it drives us crazy, but at the end of the day, it's not our decision, it's not our money. So the buyers you're going to do whatever you feel is correct. But if you say, okay, these are all the things that are wrong with the house, we have legitimate quotes, this is very reasonable to ask for, we would then go. Now, this is where we differ very big from most real estate agents. Is most agents, let me write this, let me write in red because it's silly. Most agents don't want the deal to blow up. They're more concerned about the deal blowing up, especially if you were to ever work with a listing agent. Please, for the love of God, don't do that. Most agents will say the only things you should ask for are health and safety, which is total nonsense. This is the worst advice. I got the same advice when I was buying my home because the agents didn't want the deal to blow up, right? However, with our clients, we want to protect our buyer. We want to get the best deal for our clients and protect. So what I say is, what is reasonable to ask for is anything you didn't know about. That's my definition. And why do I think that way? One, because I like to negotiate for better deals, and I don't know what I just did there. I like to negotiate for better deals. I think that's the one and two. And health and safety is like some nonsense that real estate agents made up a long time ago, and everybody just keeps saying the same thing over and over. And there's no rule or anything. You can ask for anything. So let me share a few stories. I have a client that we got into off-market property. So we were talking with this couple for quite some time. We found an off-market property because they shared what they were looking for. They got fully underwritten. They were under an exclusive buyer agreement, and I found them the off-market property that was exactly what they were looking for. We got into contract with no competition because it wasn't on the market yet. And we're going through inspections. We're doing our homework, and what did we find? We found at the inspection, there's a little bit of what looked like water damage on the baseboards. And I had the inspector go over, and they did a thermal inspection where they can see, hey, is there water behind the wall? It's kind of crazy. And he said, no, there's not any water, but this does look like water damage. We should get a mold test. Well, so we did a general, and then we did a mold test. And then we found that there is absolutely mold behind that wall. So we go to the seller and we say, hey, we need to open up this wall and figure out what's going on, because there's always a huge question mark when it comes to mold. And the seller was all pissed. They didn't want us to open up their wall, but the reality is they're now going to have to deal with this. So what we ended up doing was, because we did our general property, because we did our mold inspection, we found out that there was about, I think it was $16,000 roughly in mold damage. And that was a rough, this is a guesstimate. And the reason is, if you know anything about mold, you don't really know until you start fixing the actual problem. So how are we going to ask, right? Back to this point here. How do you ask? So you have a few different options, and you can ask for a credit, or you can ask for them to fix the problem, or you can ask for them to drop the price. Those are really your three different options when it comes to asking for them to fix it. Your pros and cons. Your pro with them fixing it is that it's fixed, right? That would be your pro. Your con is that they're going to do the cheapest option. Now, there's ways around this option. But, for example, how we do this is we want to make sure that whatever we write is exactly what we want them to do. Remember the HVAC? So remember the HVAC inspection that we talked about earlier? If I wanted them to fix it, I would go and I would say, hey, we got this quote from this company. Our request is that you do this exact quote from the company that we chose, as opposed to saying fix the AC, because duct tape might fix the AC. And if that's all you write on your request for repairs, it's a recipe for disaster. Now, that might sound ridiculous. However, we list and sell a lot of properties, meaning we represent a lot of sellers. And the stuff that we see on the request for repairs costs buyers so much money, it's unbelievable. And we know how to do deals, and a lot of real estate agents don't. So we take advantage of those opportunities for our client, whoever we're representing. So that's your pro and con of it getting fixed. Your pro and con for the credit. The pro is you can do whatever you want, number one. So if you're like, I don't really care about mold, or maybe on a more realistic situation, I don't really care about the HVAC system, I don't use the AC ever, and maybe you get a $5,000 credit and you can just go gambling with it or do whatever you want, that's fine. So that's one benefit of a credit, is it just lowers your closing cost when you get a credit. The other thing that you could do is it might be cheaper, right? You might have got a quote from company A, and you might have gone to company B and C afterwards and found out you could do it for $3,000 instead of $5,000, and now you made an extra $2,000, right? That's the pros. The con is it could be more. It could also be more, just as easily as it could be less. It could also be more, right? So this is just a trade-off. Now, the price drop, the pros and cons here is this will likely it'll drop your down payment, and it'll slightly drop your closing cost, but I'm talking, and you'll slightly drop your payment. However, even in a situation where we're talking about $16,000, this is gonna, if you were lowering the price by $16,000, let's say you're putting 10% down, that means you're saving, what is that, $160 or $1,600 off of your down payment. Isn't really a lot of money, right? So, and your payment's going to drop by dollars, and your closing costs are going to drop by, we're talking hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars maybe off your down payment if it's a large amount like this. But it's really not that big of a difference. So if I was to guess what percentage of the time, I would say 60% of the time people ask for credits. I would say 30% of the time people ask for the things to actually be fixed. And this is really more like 2% of the time. So these numbers don't make sense, but this would go, over here. So this is really not very common unless you're paying cash. If you're paying cash, this is the only way that it makes any sense, at least. Okay, So that is how we asked for a request for repair. So let me finish the story then. So we found $16,000 in mold, and what we ended up doing was we negotiated. This is a real story. We negotiated for $20,000 in credit because the seller didn't want to do the work. They were living in the home, all this stuff. We were going to do work to the house anyway, or a buyer was going to do work to the house anyway. So we asked for a $20,000 credit. We negotiated for a $20,000 credit. Now, if you're saying, Christian, how is it, this is $4,000 more, right? If you're saying how in the world, those look like twos. How in the world did you get $4,000 more? It's because the buyer took on the risk, right? And made it more convenient for the seller to do it. Therefore, we were able to ask for more money because it might have actually costed more than the $16,000 we had originally got a quote. Now, what actually ended up happening, it was more like $12,000, which my buyer was very happy with because they had $20,000 to play with. So they actually got $8,000 more in this situation. And this is a health and safety, right? Mold is a very, very big health and safety. But let me share another story. Is we had a buyer, and very simple, very straightforward. We were looking through the house, and it was in overall pretty darn good shape. And when we went in to do inspections, we found, so we were doing our homework, and we found one, there was leaks. This was from disclosures. They had had several water leaks on the property, and they did what most sellers do, was cheap fixes. Now, is there any way we could have possibly known this walking through the home? I mean, maybe we could have seen patches on the ceiling, but no, this is no way of knowing this. The HVAC was shot, still kind of working, but it was like 50 years old. It was amazing that it was still working. And then the third thing was there was a unpermitted room. Okay, and this is again, so this was from inspections. This was from disclosures. All right, disc. So what ended up happening here is we found a whole bunch of stuff, and we got real life, real hard quotes for literally everything. And what we ended up finding was there was about $30,000 in cost and, let's say, potential risk, right? Because there's no cost here necessarily, but this is a buyer risk taking on an unpermitted room. And I'm not even going to go into that in this video. And this was going to be about $15,000. And this, to repipe the whole house, was like $8,000. Right, something, I'm using really round numbers, but we found that there was about $30,000 in like adjusted risk for this buyer. So we sent over $30,000 worth of quotes, and my buyer wanted to ask for the entire $30,000, and I knew we were not going to get $30,000, but I thought we could get like 20. So we asked for 20, and we ended up getting 18.5. Now I can pretty much guarantee that if we would have asked for the 30, we would have probably pissed off the seller and blown the whole deal up. But our buyer got $18,500. None of this is health and safety. So that is why I give the advice here that if you have a real estate agent telling you, and the unfortunate part is you're not going to know until you're in escrow, but if you ask your real estate agent, if you're not working with an Onyx Homes agent, you probably should be. But I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you're out of the area. And if your agent says, hey, what do you ask for on your request for repairs? And if they say only health and safety stuff, that is what we call nonsense. All right. So this all helps you protect your money. We talked about the request for repairs. We talked about how to get all that money back. So I think that covers our homework due diligence phase. So let's go ahead and check that box off. Now, the other thing that we need to talk about is the loan and appraisal. So your loan and appraisal is going to completely depend on the lender that you actually choose to work with. So this is going to be more of a timeline question. And a lot of it is what approval, right? So let's just go like this. What approval do you have? Do you have a pre-qualification? Which is where you haven't started? Do you have a, let's just go 1. Do you have a 2? Do you have a pre-approval? Where kind of the gold standard, where you have not done a full, you have not gone through underwriting yet? Or do you have a fully underwritten? Okay, now I'm going to tie all of this in. I'm going to go back to our timeline here. I'm going to tie all of this in here in a minute as well too. But let's talk about this. So your 3 different loan options, your pre-qualification, this goes from, let's say, worst to best, right? This kind of timeline here, or timeline's probably the wrong word. These should be arrows. So fully underwritten is definitely the best. This is where you can compete with cash. And this is where you haven't started. Not great. So we want to be able to compete with cash, because what we're going to do is we're going to be able to offer less money, right? Price will go down. In terms will be better, right? We're going to make our terms better and lowering our price because we took the time to get fully underwritten up front. Now, again, if you're asking for, Christian, what is normal? Well, it depends, and normal is going to depend on, again, the lender that you're talking to. So if you have, let's just say good to bad, let's say good, great, good, bad. If you are able to, right, this is a pre-qualification, all that stuff. So as far, this is for timelines. For both loan and appraisal. Great is going to be 7 days or less. And 0 is best. I'll touch on that in a second. Good is going to be 7 to, I struggle to say 12, but I'll say 12. And then bad is 12 plus. These are all days. Right? All of these are days. So this is for your loan and appraisal contingencies. Is depending on which approval you choose to go with, which lender you choose to go with, you might be in a pre-qualification that might take 30 days to even know if you're approved or not. You might go with a pre-approval that might take 14 days to figure out if you're approved or not, or you could get fully underwritten and you don't even need a loan contingency. Or worst case, you need a 7-day loan contingency, meaning that you are more certain than a pre-approval and certainly more certain than a pre-qualification. So your lender, I'm going to do this in yellow so it stands out. Your lender might also be in 7, but it could be all the way to 21 days. And this is very, very much going to determine how good your offer actually is. So if you could imagine 2 different offers together. Now I know this isn't talking about how to write the best offer, but I just can't help myself because this is such an important thing. Let's say we have 2 different offers. Let's compare. Let's say we have offer 1 over here, offer number 2. So offer number 1 is, let's leave the price blank on both. Now we have our homework phase, right? These are the contingencies, and I'm just going to use the same line for both. So we know what it is, right? This is going to be that, that's going to be that. This is going to be your appraisal, loan, close, right? Those are the kind of your standard. These are the major terms you're going to have in any offer you would write, right? How fast are you going to close? All right, so let's say offer number 1 we're going to do in green is a really aggressive offer. This is very standard for how we write offers all the time. Is we have 7-day homework phase. We'll get our contingencies done then. 7-day appraisal contingency, no loan contingency whatsoever. We can close in 15 days. Okay, that's offer number 1. Offer number 2 is going to be more of your standard offer. So they're going to ask for 17 days for your homework contingency. They're going to ask for 17 days for the loan and appraisal contingencies, and they're going to close in, let's say, 30 days. Very standard offer. This is what, if you ask 90% of real estate agents, what does a normal offer look like? This is what they would say. So the question is, how certain, what is the difference between these two? Well, this offer is more certain that the deal's actually going to close, and that it's actually going to close at these terms, right? Let me erase this. Let me add in a few additional terms as well too, right? Let's add in like the notes section, because this is incredibly important as well. Let's say this agent had a really good conversation, so communication is a huge plus, believe it or not. A lot of agents will literally just send an email, right? So this person just sent email. This person over here is fully underwritten. This person over here is a pre-qualification. Oops. This person over here has, I'm trying to not say like down payment terms and anything else like this. Let's just say it's just that, right? Let's just say this is a good agent. And let's say this person's difficult. Okay, so which offer gets accepted, number 1 or number 2? Well, if all things are the same, if they both offered $1 million, I think it's pretty obvious which offer is going to get accepted. Offer number 1 is going to win in that circumstance every single time. But here's where we save our clients tons and tons of money, is if this one is $990,000 and this one's $1 million, is $10,000 worth the uncertainty of the buyer just straight up changing their mind because they have an extra week and a half of contingencies, an extra week and a half to even get the appraisal done? They don't even know if they're approved because they have a pre-qualification and a difficult agent. What's the likelihood that agent number 2 is going to try to renegotiate 2 weeks later, 2.5 weeks later, when we don't even know if they're approved? And also, this person's going to be closed before this person even decides to buy the home. So do we think that's worth $10,000? Well, I can tell you, as a listing agent where we represent tons and tons of sellers, 1,000% of the time we're going to tell the seller to go with offer number 1, or at least our advice is that you go with offer number 1. Now, if you're saying, okay, Christian, well, for $10,000, I don't know if I want to actually go through all this work to save $10,000. 1, that's crazy. But 2, I understand, because we also see this all the time, is where offer number 2 is $1 million and ours is $975. Now the question is, are you willing to go get fully underwritten and do a buyer strategy session and work with an agent that actually knows what they're doing for $25,000? Because we see this offer get accepted all the time. We have a very real example, very, very real case study, which is inside of the 7 saving strategies, where our client took all of our advice. They did this and they wrote an offer for $1.5 million, right? That was the price. And the price is irrelevant. I'm just sharing with you where how this really works in the real world. Offer number 2 was $1.575 million. So this is $75,000 more, right? Plus $75,000. And our offer got accepted. Our client saved at least $75,000 because they took our advice in getting prepared ahead of time. Now, this is why we spend so much time with our clients to make you feel, I say 2 things. We want you to feel 2 different ways. We want you to feel a lot of different ways. But the 2 things we really are trying to do is, number 1, we want you to be comfortable. We want you to be comfortable with the entire process so that you can write the best offer. And number 2 is we want you to be confident that you're making the right decision so that you can act fast. These two things, your ability to act fast and your ability to write the best offers, is going to save you a ton of money when you're purchasing a home. Now, to be clear, this here, this purchase price, this is irrelevant to the listing price. So I'm not saying that you're going to get so much money off the listing price. To be clear, on this example that I just shared right here, right, this 1.5 million to 1.75, this was already, like this here, our price was like 200,000 over the asking price. And the seller deliberately underpriced their property because they needed to sell quick and they wanted to be in control of the terms and they wanted to be able to pick the best buyer, which they absolutely did. So just because we were $200,000 above the asking price has nothing to do with the buyer getting a fantastic deal, because most agents will just say, what's the highest offer you have, and we'll pay more than that. And if we would have done that, it would have cost our client at least $75,000. Just to match the other offer would have cost our client $75,000. And if we would have said, hey, we'll come in $10,000 higher, we're talking almost $100,000 higher because we didn't do our job asking for terms, or in that situation, because we wouldn't have. And this exact scenario here is where we save so much money for our clients, but it's also where we keep you protected through the entire process. And we do that because, again, you're comfortable and confident with the entire thing. You know, you understand, especially if you're watching this mini-series, and if we haven't even talked yet, you have so much more information just in watching this mini-series and any of our other content than most home buyers actually have. And a lot of people treat their home buying experience as if they are buying something on Amazon, which absolutely blows me away. So in our contingencies, we have talked about your homework phase. We have talked in your request for repairs. We've talked about your loan and appraisal contingencies. And the only other thing that I think we really have to talk about are our next steps. So I highly recommend that if you are serious about saving money, you go to allaboutoc.com and connect with one of our agents. On there, you can drop your email, drop your information, and you're going to get this guide, right? I'm going to send you this 7 saving strategies. Where did the thing go? Anyway, you're going to get, there's a 126 page guide that has all of the strategies here, right? You're going to get that guide as well too. There's also a 55-minute video that I want you to watch next. But if you don't like watching videos and you're tired, well, if you're this far, you actually like watching videos. So I would highly recommend going and watching that 55-minute video. And when you're ready, book a one-on-one call with our team at allaboutoc.com. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and watch this next 55-minute video. But if you want to talk to our team, like I said, go over to allaboutoc.com. There's no cost, no obligation. We do this with clients all the time. And if you go through the consultation, you get all the information of how we do this, and you still don't want to work together, no problem at all. No cost, no obligation, totally free. Go to allaboutoc.com. And if you don't, and you want to watch this video, I'll see you in the next one.